For 7 days, the world didn't hear a word from Bill Gates. No social media posts, no interviews, no appearances, not even a public sighting. The news channels started speculating. Had something happened to him? Was it health, a private retreat, or something darker? His team refused to comment, saying only that he had taken time off for personal reflection. For a man whose every movement was tracked and discussed, his silence was louder than any statement he had ever made. On the third day, photos surfaced of his private jet parked at a small rural airport near Montana, far away from the noise of cities and the cameras of journalists. But even then, no one knew where he had gone. Some said he was visiting an old friend, others whispered about secret meetings or deep regret. But the truth, as it would later unfold, was something far more human, far more powerful, and it began with a single moment of realization. A week before his disappearance, Bill had been sitting in yet another high-level meeting, surrounded by experts discussing global health strategies. The conversation was sharp, efficient, and full of statistics. How many lives saved? How many programs launched? How many dollars distributed? But as graphs flickered across the giant screens, Bill's mind drifted. He wasn't seeing numbers, he was seeing faces. The face of a young boy he'd met years ago in Nigeria, holding a broken tablet and telling him, "One day, I'll build something that helps people too." The face of a mother in Bangladesh, thanking him for vaccines that saved her child's life. And yet, despite all the good he'd done, he suddenly felt empty. He had spent decades building systems to help humanity. But had he forgotten how to feel human himself? That question kept echoing inside him long after the meeting ended. That night, he looked around his massive house, walls lined with art, rooms filled with silence, and felt like a stranger in his own life. For the first time in years, he turned off his phone, canceled all calls, and told his assistant not to disturb him for a week. He didn't explain why, he just left. Next morning, he boarded his private jet with no entourage, no bodyguards, no assistants. Just him, a small duffel bag, a notebook, and a strange need to disappear, not from the world, but from the noise of it. When the plane landed in Montana, he rented an old cabin near a lake. The owner didn't even recognize him at first. To her, he was just a quiet older man who wanted peace. The cabin had no Wi-Fi, no cell service, and no television. Just a fireplace, a small kitchen, and a view of endless pine trees. Bill spent the first few hours sitting by the lake, watching the reflection of the mountains ripple across the water. For years, he had been surrounded by people, staff, journalists, leaders, but at that moment, he realized how long it had been since he had actually been alone. He cooked his own food, washed his own dishes, and spent the first night staring at the stars through the cabin window. It felt almost unnatural to live without noise, without plans, without a purpose beyond breathing. On the second day, he took a notebook and began writing. Not about business or global issues, but about himself. The first line he wrote was, "When did I stop enjoying simple things?" He wrote for hours, about childhood memories, regrets, failures, and the constant pressure of being Bill Gates. He wrote about how success had made him visible to the entire world but invisible to himself. He admitted that sometimes he felt like he was living in a documentary where every scene was planned for others to watch, not for him to feel. People philanthropist. Somewhere along the way, he had forgotten to just be a man, one who laughed freely, cried without guilt, and rested without purpose. By the third day, his thoughts turned darker. He remembered the times he had chosen work over relationships, logic over emotion, and control over spontaneity. He realized that being brilliant had come at a cost. He had learned how to change the world, but not how to stay connected to it. That evening, as the sun set behind the trees, he whispered, "What's the point of changing the world if you can't even enjoy it?" The wind rustled through the forest as if answering him. He smiled faintly, for the first time in days. On the fourth day, a local fisherman passed by the cabin and waved. Bill waved back. They began talking, small talk at first, then deeper. The man had no idea who Bill was. He just saw an older guy with tired eyes. They talked about the lake, the weather, and fishing. When the man asked what Bill did for a living, Bill laughed and said, "I used to work with computers." The fisherman grinned. "Must have been stressful. You're better off here." For some reason, that line stuck with Bill. Better off here. Maybe he was. That morning, he helped the fisherman fix his boat engine. They spent hours together without phones, without photos, without fame. It was a simple connection, one human helping another. And somehow, that felt more rewarding than all the awards he had received. He realized he didn't need to fix the entire planet every day. Or just sharing silence was enough. That night, he sat by the lake again, staring at his reflection. The man in the water looked older, yes, but also lighter, as if he had finally put down a burden he'd carried too long. By the sixth day, word had spread that Bill Gates might be in Montana. Reporters started circling by towns. Helicopters buzzed in the distance. But Bill didn't hide, he simply ignored them. He wasn't there to escape attention, he was there to find himself. He took long walks through the woods, talked to no one, and let nature answer questions his mind couldn't. One morning, he wrote in his notebook, "I've spent years funding solutions to human problems. Maybe the problem was never out there. Maybe it was inside us, our disconnection from simplicity, from gratitude. From each other." He underlined the words, "from each other," twice. That line, he would later say, became the most important note he ever wrote. On the seventh day, he woke up early, brewed a cup of coffee, and watched the sunrise. It was quiet, so quiet that he could hear his own heartbeat. And for the first time in decades, he didn't feel rushed. He didn't feel the weight of being Bill Gates, billionaire, innovator, or philanthropist. He felt human, just human. He realized that maybe that's all he had been looking for, the permission to stop performing and start existing. Before leaving the cabin, he tore a page from his notebook and left it on the wooden table for the owner to find. It said, "Sometimes you have to disappear to remember who you are." When he returned home, his team rushed to brief him on the chaos his absence had caused, the headlines, the speculation, the panic. But he just smiled and said, "Let them talk. I found what I was looking for." Reporters later asked where he had gone and why. His answer was simple, "I didn't go anywhere. I just came back to myself." The story spread everywhere. Bill Gates disappears for 7 days to rediscover peace. People debated its meaning, some mocking it, others inspired. But those close to him noticed a real change. He laughed more easily, listened more deeply, and spoke more softly. The man who had once measured his worth by impact now measured it by peace. Weeks later, during a rare public talk, someone in the audience asked him what he learned in those 7 days. He paused, smiled, and said, "That silence isn't empty, it's full of answers. You just have to be quiet long enough to hear them." The audience fell silent, and for a brief moment, it felt as though the world had paused with him. That was the truth about his disappearance. It wasn't a mystery, or a breakdown, or a secret mission. It was simply a man rediscovering the part of himself that success had buried under years of noise. Bill Gates didn't vanish to escape the world, he disappeared to fall back in love with it. And when he finally returned, he didn't come back as the billionaire the world knew. He came back as something far rarer, a man at peace.